Welcome to Brighter Morning with Bo, and I'm Bo Tiwari. And our guest this morning is the Dharmacharia of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, the largest Hindu organization in Trinidad and Tobago. Yesterday we had a discussion with Reverend Tilak Singh of the Presbyterian Church, significant elder of the Presbyterian Church, and we'll be talking to other religious leaders. But this morning we have the Dharmacharya with us. He is Pundit Rampersad, Parasram, and we are so happy to have him here. Punditji, Dharmacharya, Sitaram.
Jai Sitaram, thanks for having me.
Yes. I want to talk with you a little bit, gaining different perspectives from different religious leaders and from you as head of the Hindu community here. What has COVID affected the way you think our members of the community, that is to say, Hindu chelas and Hindu attendees, devotees at the temples, etc. Do you think it has affected the way that they see God and they see religion now? And has this been a time, this COVID time, for some reflection about the nature of God, the relationship between God and man, the relationship between religion and God, etc.? Has there been that kind of reflective time?
Well, I imagine there must be a level of reflection.
Yes.
Because we are in challenging times. And as you know, Dr. Tiwari, we have faced various shades of lockdown.
Yes.
Right now, we're still in a state of emergency, but over the period that we have been grappling with this pandemic, we have had to face all kinds of closures. For example, we have had the rivers and beaches closed. And as you know, one of the important ceremonies of Hindus post-death is to go to the rivers or go to the beaches to have certain ceremonies performed. What is called the Dasgatra ceremony, or locally the shaving.
Yes.
And we have had to make changes when it comes to the Dasgatra, or the shaving ceremony. And I want to say right at the onset that the Pandits Parishad of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, with due consultation, we were very happy to comply with the government's decision that we should not go to the rivers to do these ceremonies. So we went into our scriptures and we found out this information we needed to have, and we made certain adjustments.
Yes.
And then we put information out in the public domain so that all our members knew exactly what is to be done when it came to that. We have also had the mandirs closed from time to time. As you know, at one time we were at 50%, and then at 25 or 33 thereabouts, and now we're back to 25. But there was a period of time when the temples, the mandirs, were closed. And what it really meant is what we traditionally call satsang. People coming together, or what in Western terms would we call communal worship, where people come together and worship as community, as a large group. That was not happening for periods of time. And I think you would understand then that what was happening is people were doing pujas at home, or in their private puja rooms or prayer rooms. That's where they were with their families, sometimes by themselves. So there was private worship going on.
Yes.
There was also puja going on, but with limited numbers of people. So the whole idea of having the large family together, or even with bhandaras and so on, these are the feasts that we have from time to time. There weren't large numbers because the numbers were restricted. Right? So I think one does not have to be a rocket scientist to understand that there would have been a sort of negative impact when it came to
on the community.
On the community and people gathering as large groups. And since many of us belong to large families, to extended families, it also meant at times that we could not get the entire family together. right? And all these things must have negative impact upon the community. But let me just underline again that the Sanatana Dharma Mahasabha, the Pundit Parasram, we have from day one fully supported the government's guidelines with regards doing the things that we're doing, like you and I are all masked up still.
Sure.
We're washing our hands, keeping a fair distance from one another. At all our mandirs, when we go back out now because of the Ganesh Utsav, one of our major celebrations, there will be all the things necessary in place. So when I go to do puja this evening at the mandir, it's the entire business of making sure we're keeping a safe distance, hands washed, masks on, that kind of thing. Because we do recognize that there is a major health challenge worldwide. And I mean, it's been 100 years plus since the world has been challenged like this. It's been a very, very long time. You know? So we have that. The question about how do we define our relationship with God, I think that's one of the things you were asking.
Well, that's one of the hard questions I'm asking.
Yes, yeah, but actually, you know, faith is a very personal kind of thing. And the moment you asked the question, my mind actually went to chapter 17 of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the divine song of Bhagavan Krishna. So, I mean, this is one of the prized texts of Hindus worldwide. And it's one of the guidebooks that we use when arriving at decisions of what to be done and what not to be done. But in 17, we find definitions. And what I find very, very interesting is the faith of people. It uses the word men, but I think we could now interpret that word men to mean everybody.
General, everybody.
So the faith of people conforms to their mental disposition of really who they are. And the very first time I read this, after I had studied psychiatry, when I read it again, and it started to have new meaning to me, it challenged me to also ask, what is it that makes us who we are? And so I think our faith is a function of how we are brought up and the values that we are taught. And there is also something that springs from within us that wants us to believe in something.
Yes.
And of course, there are various degrees of faith, and there are also those who are the cynics who deny that the existence of a higher power and those kinds of things. So we're not speaking about that group, but not the atheists and the agnostic, but people of faith. But there's another thing that I find so very, very important in our teachings. This one comes from the Ramcharitamanas of Sant Tulsidas. That among other things, one's righteousness and one's faith is tested in adversity. And in that regard, you know, I can tell you, a little anecdote, quite honestly. When one of my relatives was faced with a major challenge, a person who was very devout, and at that time I was young and perhaps a little different from the way I am now, and I did ask the person, I said, but you have such faith in God, and yet you have to face so many problems in life. Do you still have the same level of faith? And he said, I want to tell you this. Now is the time for me to renew my faith, to have even stronger faith in God. Because what does the man of faith or the woman of faith do in adversity? We turn to a higher power and we wait. We learn to be patient. We wait for better times to come. So faith and hope. Hope in tomorrow. Because as you and I know, and it's almost cliche now, you and I know that no matter how long the dark night is, the sun will rise again.
Yes, the light will come.
Yes, and the history of humankind has always been, we have been challenged by all kinds of things, including diseases, pandemics. We've been challenged by all kinds of things. But the spirit of humankind, or the spirit of man, the spirit of people, This has allowed us to rise above the challenges, to defeat the challenges, and in the end we come out better.
Yes. All right. So you don't think that faith has been shaken? You think that perhaps people have had to reconfigure the way they look at themselves in relation to God?
Well, you can actually not even reconfigure, because like I said, if you belong to that group of people whose faith is strong, you believe in a higher power, and you believe that you need to have even stronger and more faith and more determination in adversity, I think it's really calling on that resource that allows them to strengthen their faith and resolve. And to also bring out certain other great qualities, like I mentioned, for example, patience, santosham, as we say in Sanatana Dharma. Because, you know, in times of a plenty, as we say, when there's a lot and everything is available to us, we could do anything, we take a whole lot of things for granted. We want things happen very quickly. And we forget that patience is indeed a virtue. You know, patience is a great virtue. So it brings out that kind of quality in us too.
Okay.
There will be people who have lost loved ones. There are people who have been sick. There are people who have become afraid. They too need to turn to God in a certain way. And I think the people of faith, they tend to do that in crisis.
In crisis,
yes. Those who are the doubters, the cynics, they question, like someone who is a very prominent citizen once said to me when there was an earthquake in one of our neighboring islands. The person said to me, how do you explain that if God is great and God is gracious? How do you explain that level of disaster? And I looked at him and I said, we'll talk about that another time.
Yes.
Because really it brings one to the question of the nature of God, our understanding of God. And you see, if one is looking purely for a paternalistic view of God, God is my father, mother, protector, everything, or that God is sitting somewhere in heaven or some other place, and when we call upon him now, he comes to us.
He will respond,
yes, which is one level of religion.
Yes.
But I think in the Western conversation even, we speak of pantheism and panentheism and various other kinds of religions. And in Sanatana Dharma, in its highest flights, there is a teaching, I'll be very honest, Dr. Tiwari. Sometimes I have difficulty calling you Dr. Tiwari. I'm so accustomed to calling you. You know, the fact of the matter is, there is a line that says, Yad asti tad Brahma, what exists is God. Okay. What exists is God. It comes from the great teacher, philosopher of Hinduism, Adi Shankaracharya, one of the great philosophers, saints, commentators of Sanatana Dharma. What exists is God. Now, that level, of course, requires a little bit of scholarship.
Yes.
And it also requires having participated in satsang, in discourses over a long period of time, to come to that kind of understanding. And then in Hinduism, there is such a wide degree of variance between one group of believers and another group of believers.
It's quite a diverse religion.
Yes, it is so diverse.
Yes.
As you know, we have 6 systems of orthodox Hindu philosophy.
Yes.
And people are allowed to pursue almost any path to God based on their understanding of God. In the Mahashiv Puran, one of our great works, there's a set of line in what is called the Koti Rudra Samhita that speaks to whatever sights are seen, whatever is recalled, all of that is Shiv. And then it goes on to describe Lord Shiva as the universe. And anyone who's reading chapter 11 of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita knows about Vishwarupa Darshanam, which Arjuna perceives God or sees God when he's blessed with divine vision as everything that pervades the universe, omnipresent, immanent, transcendent, all the big terms that you could use, really. So if you look at what is happening, how do we interpret the events that are happening? Do we blame it on some higher power or not? It depends on our understanding of God and our understanding and workings of the universe. But there is another thing too. Even though we may have this belief of a paternalistic God, a God who is kind and merciful and everything else, in the very Bhagavad Gita, the divine song that I'm speaking about, there is a line that jumps out at me, where Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Kalasmi sarva bhutanam, I am death to all. I am the time spirit too. So if we look at God as everything, then everything, the workings of the universe, is also the working of the divine.
Yes.
Men and women of faith, in my view, and I can speak about my personal life,
Yes.
I surrender to the will of that force, that power, whatever you call it.
Yes.
We call it, whether we call it Paramatma, whether we call it Parameshwara, whether we call it Maheshwara, whether we call it Brahman, right? That supreme eternal spirit that pervades everything. It's out there. And you and I know that no amount of prayer will stop the sun from rising. Right?
Yes.
It will not stop the night from coming, for the seasons will continue to change regardless of what we do. The fact is, nature is so powerful that it will proceed as it is intended to.
Yes.
If you ask me, so how is it intended to proceed? Well, you and I could talk about that from now till the end of time, yes.
Yes, another year.
Yes.
But let me ask you, you are in a very unique position, Dharmacharya, because you would have trained as a medical doctor and you would then have become a psychiatrist.
Yes.
So in this time, your medical knowledge would guide you. Your psychiatric knowledge would guide you. You would also see from your own temple, from talking to other pundits in the Parasad about what is happening in their temples, their communities, you would know, for instance, the impact. The impact has been economic. The impact has been financial. A lot of people have lost their jobs. It would also be psychological, because you now have difficulty with keeping the family together and even putting food on the table.
Well, let's look at it. I mean, let's look at it. I mean, it's no secret. Psychiatrists have written about it. Psychologists have written about it. Some time ago, I read something that came out of the Center for Disease Control.
Yeah.
I don't want to absolutely put on my medical hat, because I'm speaking to you wearing my hat as Dharmacharya.
Yes.
But notwithstanding, I mean, my medical training and my training as a psychiatrist, you're quite right, they have taught me how to research material, interpret material, and in making decisions about what to say, what to do, and so on, I factor all these things. But it was clear that there were high levels of stress, for example. There were reports of increased drug use in people.
Yeah.
Depression, suicidal ideation, all these kinds of things were happening. And then there was, as you point out, it is no secret that as a consequence of lockdowns and other things, people have lost jobs, businesses have closed. Food prices have shot up.
Yes, that's another major thing.
I am not a shopper like in times gone by, no, but I mean, when I look at the prices of certain things, the jump.
The jump is severe.
It is severe. Yeah. It is very significant. So there is a level of stress, and there are also the social, economic issues arising from the fact that we are still grappling with the pandemic.
Yes.
Some time ago, when people were losing jobs and other things, there was a report at least of one family in which the bread earner, having lost his job, committed suicide. Now, I don't have all the history as to whether he had a previous history of suicidal attempts or depression or anything, but notwithstanding, it highlights the fact that sometimes the worst can even happen. And of course, what we're required to do, if you ask me, what do I do, for example? And what does the Sanatana Dharma Mahasabha do in terms of reaching out to families, for example?
But you all have been doing that, right?
Well,
You've been providing a lot of food.
Absolutely. In fact, I am very proud to be
like
part of a team of people who from day one have been very, very involved in providing support to the community in a variety of ways. But I think you know, Bo, and I know that we have taken the position always, we don't broadcast what we do.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
you do your work quietly.
That's right.
You help people, you support them.
So it's not about walking around with a camera.
It's not about publicity.
You know, so it's not that. And for example, one of the programs which management allowed me to do at Radio and TV Jagrati, which is a sister station of yours now, is the program called Hamare Sukhi Parivar that speaks to families about ways and means of coping during this crisis.
But I've heard a couple of those when I'm driving.
Well, I hope they have been meaningful.
Yes.
And then there's the other thing about religious programming. And we are in the fortunate position that we have a radio and television station where we are able to reach people.
In their homes.
In their homes, yes. And we have deliberately designed programs for all age groups. And we, meaning the management of Radio and TV Jagrati, of course I have my inputs when necessary, but the General Secretary and the CEO and others, they plan these programs, like programs for children who were at home for prolonged periods of time. For, as I'm saying, for the family, that's the program I do. And then you have the religious programs, some in the morning, some at night, so that we kept the satsang going, if you wish.
Yes.
We kept the
in a different way,
going.
Using technology and media.
Yes. And thank God for the battles fought by our forefathers, so that we were able to have these tools now that we can use for the uplift and benefit of the community.
Okay, that's very good. As a response at the human level and also at the psychological level. And also in terms of trying to reach. But the Hindu community in general and the Mahasabha in particular have been very strong on the vaccine issue, asking people to take the vaccines to protect themselves and to protect others.
Yes, indeed. And as you are aware, I myself joined that campaign to vaccinate TNT.
Yes.
But even before the campaign started, I had been advocating, the Sanatana Dharma Mahasabha had been advocating for people to get vaccinated, and we still continue to do that. There is something called the Dharmacharia's vaccination plea, and you know the word plea is stronger than just asking people to do it. It is really beseeching people to go out there and get vaccinated. And that, even as I speak with you now, that will be my message to all Trinidadians and Tobagonians, people everywhere in the world who are listening to us. Vaccination gives us our best chance. And it's in the public domain now. Yes, okay, you can still get the disease, you can still be a carrier, whatever, although you're vaccinated. But the effect of the disease, the impact is going to be less.
Yes, of course.
You're not going to have that very severe illness or anything like that. So please vaccinate. I mean, that's always been my message.
And that's important because it helps you, it helps your family, it helps the community and all the people that you engage. You help to protect them. You know, I want to take you out of Hinduism and the Mahasabha and your concern about the community for your concern for the society as a whole. Do you think that somehow, as a society, as a political system, as a constitutional order in this society, that we are kind of losing our way, and that in a fundamental way, the leadership is not rising? And by leadership, I don't mean any individual. I mean general leadership across the country. Do you feel perhaps that they are not rising to the challenge of our time and the need for leadership to really be an example and to inspire and motivate others? Do you feel that something is happening?
Well, let's define something first of all. When people say leaders in Trinidad and Tobago, they tend to think political
leaders, yes.
But you and I know, and I think most of the listeners, viewers know, that we have leaders in every sphere.
Yes.
So they are business leaders, they are leaders in the family, they are religious leaders, like I am privileged to be, and they are opinion leaders, like you yourself and others. And the question is, you speak about change, the times in which we live. Well, these are challenging times. Yes, they are challenging times. And it really then must demand of anyone in leadership roles, and when I am broadening it to include myself, anyone in leadership roles, we have got to lift the level of conversation to a point where people would be inspired or guided to do what is right by individual communities, families and communities, and by the state. And so you have that. Because I am very convinced in my mind, I've always been convinced, and that's how I've tried to conduct my life.
Yes, of course.
There is, again, going back to Bhagavad Gita, as you see, you're trying to take me out of religion.
No, I'm not.
Yes.
I want to take you into the society and the social order and the political system. But I know that as Dharmacharia and as a Pundit, you are coming to it from a spiritual point of view, grounded
and that's
in the teachings.
Exactly,
yes.
That's who I am.
Yes.
So there is a statement that says, Yad yad acharati sreshtas, tat tat eve taro janah. This is Sanskrit. Whatever the prominent do, yad yad acharati sreshtas, tat tat eve taro janah. That is what the people do. Sa yat pramanam kurate, lokastad anuvartate, and they set the benchmarks for the society. So we're talking prominent people are the ones that the average person looks up to, and they are the ones who set the benchmark for the rest of the society.
Dharmacharya, I wonder if you would say the English part of that in one sentence, that whatever the prominent do, others will
follow.
take a cue from that and follow.
Absolutely.
So that our leaders, wherever they are located, whether in the political realm, whether in the business realm, whether in the religious realm, for that
community,
matter,
family, wherever,
community, etc., that will sink in. That you cannot have a leadership position in which you are constantly presented a flawed personality or judgment and not expect it to have a consequence on those who look up to you as a leader.
Sure.
So I will give you a chance to talk about that.
And listen, I agree with you. Look, I am Dharmacharya.
Yes.
What does that mean? An acharya is a teacher. He's an exemplar. He's one who leads by example and teaches.
Yes.
You wouldn't expect me, and the community should not expect me to be careless in the way I speak or with the way I behave, or to be reckless in my social behavior.
Yes.
Because the words I speak and the way I carry myself will send strong signals to the Hindu community.
Yes.
Yes? Yes. And the same is true at every family. It's like a father in a family.
In a household.
Must be an exemplar.
Yeah.
And must carry himself in a certain way in organizations, as you say, in business, in every, and in politics, everywhere.
Yes.
In religion, we have those who are given privileges, who are given prominent positions, must conduct themselves properly. And in my mind, properly means as best as they can for the uplift of whichever organization or group they lead.
Yes. In leadership, the greatest responsibility is not to the self, really. It is the responsibility of the self to those whom you lead and those for whom you are setting the tone and giving the example. Is that not true?
In fact, that is my philosophy. Why am I doing this?
Yes.
Why are you and I sitting here and talking?
Yes.
If I'm doing this for just promoting myself, for satisfying my ego, then quite honestly, I would have been better off home having breakfast at this time.
Yeah, it would be futile.
You see? But I do believe that one who's a managing director or a leader in business or anything, you do it for the greater good of the community you serve. And as you were talking about, I did medicine, and I had interest in various kinds of things in the society. And I'm a practitioner of religion. I pursue spirituality. I do it for myself, yes, when it comes to my own development, because I also believe that one has to light one's lamp first.
Yes.
Only then you can spread light.
That's right.
But in the end, it must translate into benefits for the community that I serve.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in that.
Okay. For the leader, then, the community is paramount.
I should think so.
The society is paramount.
Absolutely.
The nation is paramount.
In fact, there is a line in the Ramcharitamanas in Kishkinda Kand, what is called Pravarshan Katha of the Ramcharitamanas. Woe be unto the king who does not love his people.
Yes.
You know, so when you think about that, and this is hundreds of years ago, Sant Tulsidas was writing, was telling us, using a very important, that the leader must love his people.
Yes.
And you know, love is a very powerful word.
Of course.
But it tells you the sentiment of the poet, the saint, as he's writing about politics and governance and those kinds of things. But as you know, I am not going to at all attempt to get into partisan politics or take sides and that kind of thing.
I know that.
So these are really general comments about leaders and
leadership in general.
In general, yes.
Okay. Dharmacharia, I want to thank you so much. We're coming to the end, and we're going to have to close the break for the news. But I want to thank you, first of all, for accepting the invitation to be part of this conversation. And it has been a delightful conversation. I like the way you relate issues about contemporary life, society, human behavior to specific quotations that you have from memory, from the scriptures, to connect them for the listener and the viewer. I find that very powerful because it shows the eternal nature of the religion and the religious teaching, but it shows its relevance to contemporary life, even in a time of crisis and change. And I want to thank you very much for sharing your time with me this morning. And I want to say that you are the first guest that I've ever interviewed since I started this program almost 3 months ago. In the studio, that all my other guests have been done virtually. And I want to say that I assume with all of that, you have brought your blessings, and I thank you very much for being here with me this morning.
I want to thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And let's hope that what we have done here will redound to the benefit of at least one or two people. And I was very happy to accept your invitation and to join you here in studio.
Well, I thank you very much. And